Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to be looking at Starbase again. Today we're going to be talking about requirements, system requirements, performance, things like that. Basically, we're going to show you how you can find out what your system specs are and how you can compare them to the game. And we'll even use another website to help you out there if you want to get a better idea of what you're doing. So let's get started. So if you've been to the Steam page for Starbase, you might notice that there is a minimum requirement and a recommended requirement. Now, they have slight minimum requirements here, but most of it's been the recommended requirements. The big one here for minimum requirements is DirectX 11. At this time, they're using DirectX as their engine, and it's 11, not 12. So basically, the requirement there is pretty simple. Most modern GPUs should be able to get that as a requirement, and I will show you in a minute how you can check which version of DirectX 12 you have. Now, the graphics card they are recommending is the GTX 1060 6GB version, and that's very, very important. It's a very video RAM intensive game. You have to remember it's open sandbox, seamless world, so you're going to build lots of ships and stations and things like that, so you're going to have to use a little extra video RAM than normal. And as far as we know, this game is a little bit more demanding on the GPU than CPU, which is normally a good thing, but you also have to keep that in mind that it does require a decent beefy GPU. That being said, if you use an older GPU, you might be able to get away with it, but keep in mind that your video RAM is actually the most important thing. Like I said, they're saying right now minimum 6GB. They have stated that you might be able to get away with 4 as a base model, but they do recommend 6GB. So you guys with 4GB, you probably can get away with it. It might eat into a bit of your shared memory, maybe not. And those who are under 4GB, you probably are not going to have a nice, pretty time. It might work still, but you probably are going to have a lot more performance issues because it'll start eating your shared memory, which is your RAM. And it's not, oh, you have 64 gigs, you're fine. It's basically RAM runs slower and it takes a little more time to, process through the motherboard in a sense, to communicate with the devices and to, calculate, etc., etc. So you will have a bit of a slower time there. That being said, if you do have 4GB or more, you should be okay. Recommended at this point, in a sense, is 6GB or higher. And the CPU, which isn't listed here, they show the CPU over here, is basically any modern i5, as in, I think, is it the 7 or 8? I think it's probably 8 and higher, where they became quad cores in a sense. But you'd probably want any modern 4-core minimum processor. And then or an i7, somewhat modern, but even an older i7 you probably would be fine. They are using 4 cores. I think they said that they might not be utilizing much more out of 4 cores. So if you have 8 cores, sure, I'm sure it'll utilize a wee bit out of that. But from what I'm understanding, they're basically focusing and utilizing 4 cores. And if you have 2 cores, I think you're going to have some problems there. So I do recommend a 4-core or higher processor. I think that will make a big difference there. And you can see that their recommended spec here for the video card is an 8GB 1080 Ti 11GB one here, which that is one beefy card. But keep in mind, I think you're not going to have to go that far to play, but this would probably be able to. I think this was roughly around the specs for a 4K version of the game running at 60 FPS. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but if I recall reading, it was a 1080 Ti used for the recording of the trailer, which was featured at 4K. So, so we kind of get the understanding. So basically, you need a decent video card. It needs to be, 6GB recommended. You would probably get away with 4GB. If you have something less than that, more chance you'll probably have some issues. And these things will change over time. Keep in mind, these developers are constantly optimizing the game, and they will optimize the game in the future. For example, if I recalled reading, one of the big optimizations that they would like to do is redo the particles. I guess people were talking about the explosions and things like that. And keep in mind, in the trailer and video, they kind of overdid the explosions. They wanted to be transparent and honest about that, so they don't want to mislead people in this game. So everything they've shown is happening and is in the game, but when it came to the trailer and the explosion parts, some of it was kind of cranked up a little higher dial, so you would actually have better performance than what you saw in the trailer, because you wouldn't be literally, one-shotting everything to Kingdom Come in a sense. You wouldn't be the Godzilla of ships and completely vaporizing, at least with the same ships that they had displayed in the trailer. Okay, so to figure out what your computer specs are, you're going to hit your Windows and R key, and you're going to type in DXDIAG. Capital D and capital D again. Don't know if that actually really matters, but I guess using Linux and stuff over time, I normally put capitals where they're needed. And when you open this up, you will get this window. It might take a minute to open, and it'll tell you a bit information about your system. And this is a pretty safe page. You can share this with others. You can even save your information. A lot of times, developers, when you're having issues, this is where they ask you to go save all your information, and it prints out a nice little sheet, and then you attach it or put it on like Pastebin, things like that. And this is what developers like to ask sometimes if you're having issues. So you can see here Windows 10. Actually, I think Windows 10 is a requirement. No, it's not a requirement, actually. I'm going to say, it says Windows 7 or 10. So yeah, if you're using Windows 7, you're still fine, because it's not using DirectX 12, right? So you're fine right now with that. So ignoring the operating system here, you want to check out your processor. So our processor is an i9-9900K, which is very overkill for what we need here. Basically, that's 16 CPUs. So that's 8 cores, 16 threads, if I recall. And my memory here, RAM-wise itself, is 32 gigabytes. Which says 32,768 megabytes. So you could just put a comma right there and just look at that first part, and you know what you're doing, which we didn't even talk about that. It does say here somewhere 16 gigabytes. They're saying you probably will be able to get away with 8 gigabytes, but for safety, they are saying 16 gigabytes. Right now, most of their testing is done using their editor, which basically has an overhead on it. There's a lot of debugging and things like that going on, as well as the editor itself. So I think they're kind of pushing past the 8 gigabytes. They're probably also running other things on their dev machines, but basically the dev machines themselves are running, I think, roughly the average is like an i5 8600 with 16 gigs of RAM and the 2060 6 gigabyte version. So that gives you kind of an idea what they're using for development. And that's considered higher than normal because they're doing a lot more with the editors and things like that. So that's kind of cool. So anyway, 32 gigabytes of RAM, which we're basically, on the safety limit, we're double. On the you probably be okay limit, you're 4 times higher there. So that's not too bad. But keep in mind now, if you have 8 gigabytes of RAM and you're running at the 4 gigabyte video card or even less, you're using some of that shared memory. You definitely are gonna have problems. I'm sorry. At that point, you're going down. If you have 8 gigabytes and only maybe 4 gigabyte card, you'd be fine. But if it's a little less than that, you really are gonna be tanking. I don't think you'll be able to play. But anyways, so yeah, you get your information here. You can see your DirectX version here, which everyone should be pretty much 12 or 11. If you're using Windows 7, I assume it'd be 11, because I don't know if DirectX 12 ever made it to Windows 7. But yeah, and then your second page here, I'll go to display 2 because this is my center monitor, but these are my left, middle, right monitor. And so here you can look at your GPU. So I have RTX 2080. The last gen was called, or the last gens, I should say, were GTX. But yeah, they changed it up to the RTX now. And you can see here, display memory, VRAM. This will be a bit off because I think they utilize some of it for other things, probably on the video card itself. But you can see I have 8,100 megabytes. So this is considered an 8 gigabyte card. So this, once again, is well within the recommended and well within past the minimum requirements. So that's all good. So really good information there. You can see I'm using a 1080p monitor. 144 hertz. You probably are thinking, why don't you play more with your specs, Kane? I have some visual issues. Like I'm kind of a bit blind. I wear very heavy duty glasses. Well, thankfully they're not heavy duty now with technology. We made them pretty thin and light, but as a kid, I would have been the Coke bottle kid. So you get the idea there. So, okay, how do you find out your specs? Like, how do you match them up, you might be asking, because you might be kind of new to computers and some of these numbers don't make sense and you don't have one of these video cards, right? So what you can do is you can hit Control Tab here and you can go to Video Card Benchmark and you can get some really good information here. So the website here is, let's hit F11 here, videocardbenchmark.net. videocardbenchmark.net, and you literally just type that in Google. You should find this page anyways. And what you do is you go to high-end video cards. If you're literally not listed on here, you're probably doomed. And then let's just say you have a 1050 video cards. I'm gonna hit 1050, and 1050s are the ones that are a little under. So you got the 1050 Ti. So let's open this in a new tab, and then you got another 1050 down here. There you go. And I think there's even a weaker version of 1050, but I think it's up and down. Okay, so there you go. So let's hit F11. Let's go here. So the first 1050 we get here is, you check here basically, and you can check some information here, the wattage, power, things like that. But what we want to know is the memory usage, which it should say in here. I'm a little blind, so it's going to take me a second to find it. Here you go. Graphics, memory clock, speed. Oh, here it is. Max memory. Here you go. 4096. So this is considered a 4 gigabyte card, which is perfect. I shouldn't say perfect. You're still considered under the recommended specs, or the recommended minimum specs, I should say, on Steam, but you're theoretically probably going to be safe with this card. Now, if you're going to go out and buy a new card, I wouldn't jump out for this one, but that being said, if you already have a card like this, etc., you should be okay. Okay, we're not going by performance of the GPU right now, by the way. That's another thing we can look in after. So if we check the GTX 1050 one here, you're going to look at here and you're going to see max memory is 2048. I'm sorry, even if the GPU calculations itself can keep up, I would say you would have a lot of trouble here with this video card. Two is too pushing it, honestly. You can use your shared memory on your RAM, and you might be able to still play, but I don't know what the performance is going to be like. Unfortunately, I don't even think I have a card that old anymore around here. I wish I did, because it'd be fun to test this out for you guys. Actually, no, I do. I have like 3 or 4 cards, but it'll be a while before, the testing comes out. But and then I'll want to make videos of playing it. But yeah, you're probably going to be pretty sore on this video card, let alone the performance of it itself. The video RAM is kind of hurting. So this would be, you're not going to be doing so good. So when you see GTX 1050, you have to keep in mind there's a 2 gig model. I think there might be even a 3 gig model and then a 4 gig model. But yeah, you want definitely probably around 4 gigabytes. You might be able to slip by with the 3 gigabytes. I think 2 gigabytes, you're going to be hurting. But like I said, you can attempt to do it with your shared memory, which basically uses some of your RAM on that. So it's a really good resource. So if you see this is kind of like sort of a benchmark here. So you can see right off the bat, you're dropping, like 1,300 points there. So if we go back here, you can look at my video cards. So I'm not rich. I don't have the 2080 Ti. I have just a regular 2080. And by the way, it's an expensive card, but I bought my video card and CPU from Lenovo as a full computer package, cheaper than what I could buy just a CPU and video card at. It was a price error, and I've never bought a pre-made computer ever. And the only reason I did it was because of the price error. I could literally get those 2 parts out and I've saved money. And I had 32 gigs of RAM, had a NVAC the new M2 drives, right? It runs at like 3,500 megabytes a second, but really good. Anyways, this is my video card. So when you see the difference here, you're going like 2.5 times higher here when it comes to performance. So really, really big change here. You know, outside of the memory, I have enough video memory, so I don't have to worry about, you know, clunky world, things like that getting in the way. And then, of course, I'll get higher FPS, let alone because of the performance as well. So you have to keep in mind, you know, it's not just about the video memory, it's also about the performance. But I know a lot of people with crappy computers are used to playing at really low specs and playing at low FPS, and they're used to that, and they don't even mind in some ways, because they're just, you know, I have a friend who could play games at like 10 FPS. My eyesight problem I would be migraine in seconds. But for you people out there who are able to do it, awesome. Okay, so that's how you kind of look at the video, the video card, benchmarks, and kind of compare them and check them out. So really good source, honestly, and you can just check out, you know, random things here. So I don't know much about the, the Radeon. I don't even know what they're called, to be honest, anymore. Let's go up here. So what's like one of the top Radeon? I feel like the Radeon ones would be like, don't they have like a bit of these look like developer kind of cards? Quattro, isn't that NVIDIA? Okay, here's an RX Vega. Is that what they're calling the cards now? I thought they would have like regular names. Oh, okay, Radeon Pro. I really don't know. We're gonna check this one. This Pro WX 20 samples. Okay, no one buys those cards. Honestly, Radeon is not such a great card these days. It's getting better, but okay, this one here, VII. I have no clue about this video card. I don't even know how they label them. I feel like this is like maybe a special card, but you can see max memory, 16 gigabytes. Yeah, this is definitely not a gaming card, probably. I feel like this is, I mean, it could work as a gaming card, but I feel like this is a development card, like video editing and video rendering and things like that. But, wow, the price is not horrifying. It's actually really cool to see how much memory is in that, though. But, yeah, so you get the idea. You come here, you can compare it, and then you can go from there. And, oh, here you go, R9 39X. I think that's like a regular card. So memory size, 8 gigs. So it looks like your Radeon ones actually have a decent amount of memory. So that's good news for you guys who use Radeon cards. But, of course, your performance also has an effect. So we can talk about this forever. Let's go to the CPU. So CPU benchmark, we can go over here. High-end CPU once again, and so you can compare them. So mine's a 9900X. Let's open that in the new one. My last one was a 4660K. Or no, 4770. Yeah, that's what it was. And my one before that was like a 2600K. No, not AMD. It's Intel. Here it is. Actually, no, I think I had one before that too. No, maybe it was that. Okay. So right away, what you're looking for is you want 4 cores, basically. This one says number of cores, i9 9900X. Is that what it is? Yeah. Number of cores, 10. 2 logical. Wait a minute. I thought I had like... I don't even know my own video card anymore. Or card. Yeah, it is. I'm just checking here. So this is good news for me. I'm a bit of an idiot here. So we check here. It's a 9900K. Oh, there's an X and a K version. Oh, okay. So 9900X and K. Okay, we're further down the line. That's fine. So right off the bat, this is not always a good way to check your performance. This is actually a really bad way to check your performance. This means nothing because you guys on AMD will be like, oh, well, hey, I have 16K in my CPU is like very old. This is actually where you want to look right here. Single thread rating, because all games basically have like a main thread that always gets basically eaten and over toppled, basically, almost always. Now, this game is supposed to utilize 4 cores, so that's great. The way that boost works on CPU, so you know how you have the turbo boost or whatever on your CPU. As far as I know, the way that works is it actually only turbo boosts 1 core, not 2 cores, not 4 cores, not 8 cores. As far as I know, it only does 1 turbo boost core. So that's really good for gaming because that one main thread can really jump up there for performance. So what you're looking for here is basically number of cores 4, not threads. So this one has 4 cores, 2 logical cores per physical. So that's what we call like hyper-threading and stuff like that, HT, whatnot. So if we open Task Manager here, And if I go to my performance, the CPU, I'm just making sure there's not like any revealing information. I don't think so. Here you go. You might think, oh, you have 16 cores, but no, actually I only have 8 cores, and I have 16 logical cores. So you can see 8 and 16 right there. And it gives you an idea how that works there. And yeah, so basically that's my CPU specs. So if you check out my older one here, it has 4 cores, and the single thread rating is 2250. This I would say is still a pretty good number. I'd say you probably are okay even lower than 2000, honestly. But I would say probably anything over 2000 will give you a good, gaming overall. But even then, that's considered a little slow and old now. But I still think you could probably get away with it a bit. The i7 2600 here. This is actually 4 cores. It's single thread rating here is almost 2000. So I would say you'd be able to play the game here. It'll be a little slower, of course, but the game's more on CPU than GPU. But then again, if you have such a slow CPU like this on an older CPU, you're probably not going to have a good GPU. So the combination of the two are probably going to really slow you down. So yeah. So if we checked out Steam here, they said they didn't have a requirement here, right? So they have an i6700 here. So that'll be just kind of in between here. So if we go here, 6700, so you can see single thread rating is 2353, which is not too bad. And that was their recommended, okay? Now the dev version, what the devs are using mostly internally from my understanding, is this one right here. So they're using an i5. K version or not probably doesn't matter. If there's another version without K and it's just blank, I would sometimes recommend that. The K version basically sometimes means it's unclocked. Oh, actually it has a higher number though. I thought that was only because it can be overclocked. Anyways, you probably have to correct me on there. 2500, yeah. So my CPU is actually quite phenomenal. One of the reasons why I went for it and trigger, like I said, I have to get this new computer, was because of that single thread performance. Like I said, most games still have a main thread. They honk down on that, and it causes your games to lag, and it's always like sort of like that one single thread that kills it. But more games are now using multiple cores, but they still have that one thread that kind of goes a little higher than the rest of them that kind of bogs you down. So yeah, basically single thread rating is the way to look for performance for gaming when you are looking for performance for gaming. So yeah, that's basically the minimums, how you can look up your stuff using the DirectX dialog, or not dialog, I don't know why I call it dialog, it's diagnostic tool, which we used here, which is great. And then using the Passmark software site, which you can literally go to CPU benchmark or video card benchmark.net, and you'll be able to get the information here. And yeah, so hopefully that helps you guys out there. Gives you a bit more information, what is required to play. I am sorry, I know not everyone out there will have the required specs, but I hope this was like a really good and detailed, I know it's a long video, but a good detailed video on just, learning, figuring how that works and how people go through that, like if you just learn that and you've never known much about computers, and if you just saw this video, you, in a sense, now probably know more than, say, 80% of computer users or 90% of computer users out there, because this is the basic knowledge of computers. It's just knowing how to compare computer parts with other computer parts and understanding that. And so just this alone will help you, be able to self-educate yourself, I guess, and be able to determine if your computer meets the requirements, the minimum and maximum requirements. Now, there's sites out there where you can click on it and basically does all the fancy stuff for you, blah, blah, blah. I find those have high error rates at times and stuff like that. I've never used one, but this is the way I do it, and this is the way I know a lot of professionals also use it to compare when looking at hardware. So yeah, that's basically it. Good news is the developer, Lori, I believe it's Lori, and Lori's a he, which is awesome. By the way, I know in our culture, the West, men don't usually have the Lori as a name. We have Lauren, I think, as a more common male name and female. But they're in Finland, I believe, and Lori is actually a more of a common male name. Oh, actually, I don't know if it's more common than female and stuff, but I know it's more common to know more Lori names in their part of the world, which I think is really cool. I always thought like the mix, like, trying to like figure out like, are you gonna have a boy or a girl and you can't figure out a name? Well, if you find a name that fits both of them, I think that's awesome. Anyways, that's enough ranting on the poor CEO. I really hope he never watches this video or any of his workers. But anyways, Lori had stated that, yes, we need to have alpha before launch. His quote was, "Yes, we need to have alpha before launch." This was right after I basically talked about if we do have a stress test, more than likely it'll be like a stress test more than anything. Somebody was wanting to play like the sandbox mode, and like maybe they can remove it out of the game so people can build ships and stuff. And I said, honestly, I don't know. I just posted that. But I accidentally had that copy and paste in Discord. I just pasted it in Discord. People are going to be like, what is this guy talking about? But anyways, he is the CEO of the Frozen Byte, and he does definitely sound like he would like to run an alpha for stress testing. And that's understandable too, right? Because you kind of want to stress test the game. I think the way they'll do it is basically they'll just be stress testing the server and the P2P stuff, and then having people come to, a mega station. They might just do one mega station, maybe they'll be testing all 5. But it does sound like they might have some sort of alpha plan before the early access, but I can't guarantee it. Maybe they'll be confident and be happy. Of course, anything can change, but it does sound like something like that's going to happen. And then keep in mind, like with all the specs and everything we're talking about, they're going to be changing things over time. They're going to be rewriting things like the particles. I know they said something about rewriting those over time, and there will be other things that they'll rewrite render-wise. Heck, they might end up going, say, Vulkan or DirectX 12, things like that down the road. And if they go Vulkan API, I know a lot of people will be happy because that means there's a higher potential for other systems. But you guys on Mac, well, I think Mac is doomed at this point. I think everyone's just gutting Mac support. So you guys on Mac, I mean, you guys know that you just can't play games anymore, right? You do the, I don't know what you call it, camp boot or camp boot? Boot camp, I think it's called. But, you need to get a copy of Windows and do it that way if you're on Mac. You Linux guys, I mean, you guys know the same story. You're such a small number of players. I mean, all developers would love to be able to have it working on any and all devices, but you do have to agree with the whole idea that it gets very expensive development time-wise to be providing, versions for all the different systems when 95, actually, I think it's like more like 97, 98% of the players are on Windows PC. So, anyways, the game is looking great. They keep showing us more and more. I'm really looking forward to it. I read an article the other day, which was with Lori, actually. It was back last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. Or was it the year before? I think it was last year. It was maybe in the summertime. But it sounded like Starbase was planning to release that year, actually. But I guess something held up, and they wanted to polish it more before they went into early access. But they've been working on the game for 5 years. And even then, I found out they trademarked Starbase itself, something like 2012, I believe. And it sounds like this is like kind of Lori's baby. Like this is like his dream game. And so I think that's really unique. Basically from what I read in the article, their technology at the time was not advanced enough for the voxel and all the new destruction techniques they wanted to do, that they had to wait to develop it before they could actually start working on Starbase again, sort of. So even though Starbase is actually technically being worked on more than 5 years, I guess it hasn't been full rampage till it was about 5 years. Sorry, I'm not saying that right. Sorry, my grammar and English gets mixed up sometimes. I guess they, were playing with it and they wanted to work on it, and then they put it on pause, and then they started it up again, and then they worked on it for 5 solid years till this point, and then they're going to work probably another couple of years before it gets out of early access. So think about like a solid 7 years they're going to be working on this game. It's phenomenal. And the performance stuff, I was going to tell you about performance. They're doing a P2P meshing system. So what that does is basically that, like a ship blows up and goes into pieces. On a MMORPG, a lot of times, if there's physics and stuff like that, a lot of that gets calculated on the server side and then, syncs up and, everyone sees the same. Well, in this game, what it does is doing it like P2P style. So your computer will simulate, your ship blowing up, and it will send that update to the players nearby you, so they get the, basically the synced up, of your ship blowing up. And so that's how they're cutting, I would say costs for performance, but it's not like they're being cheap. It's being smart, because this day and age, unless if you're Google and you have like a massive rendering farm, you can't do that. You need to be able to use like the local resources that the computers have themselves. And so P2P meshing is actually becoming a very popular thing. So things like Elite Dangerous has it. A lot of FPS games actually have P2P now. A lot of people don't realize that, but quite a few of them do. So P2P meshing, and they'll have dedicated servers as well mixed into mixed in there, is a really, really good way for performance. So for people who are like, well, I've played Space Engineers and, I blow up my ship and I lag in single player. Then I played multiplayer and somebody took a fart, and then that was it. The server crashed. You're not going to experience the same, issues in Starbase. And not only that, we've seen from the videos and things like that they seem to be better. I think part of their technology with their engine and stuff, they have better destruction and physics and things like that. So their calculations are a bit better. Space Engineers, to be honest, not bashing it, love the game, has always had a rougher time when it's come with his physics. I think originally they used Havoc or whatever, or maybe it was a different one, and then they went with Havoc. I don't remember all the details, but it's always had a rough period. I mean, it was several years before they got the wheels and rotors to not blow up in multiplayer. I mean, they went through so many iterations, and they would work a bit, but they'd still blow up and do something else and stuff like that. So I guess, long story short, Starbase, in a sense, is hopefully going to be a lot superior in the performance world, and they seem to taking big steps in that area. And honestly, a developer this day and age doesn't make an MMO like a Space Engineers. It's going to be a lot different than Space Engineers still, but they don't make like, that kind of an MMO unless they know they can handle it. And these guys sound like they can handle it. So I'm looking forward to it anyway. So yeah, I'm going to shut up now. I love you guys. I really love this game. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. I'm hoping, I can get into, like if they do an alpha test, I'm going to be testing things here and there. I'm not going to be, running to a ship and building as fast as possible. I want to test like, things like performance and find any issues here and there. And I just love like to test every nook and cranny. When I used to do testing for games like back in the day, used to have massive spreadsheets, and I would just go and have all these different, sometimes the developers would have them, or I'd create them myself, and I would just basically have all these things, and I would have checks basically saying, okay, this works, this doesn't work, things like that. And even like on larger updates, you'd go through it and you'd check, okay, we'll test this, we'll test this, we'll test this, especially if like, okay, this category, this area, they worked on a certain area that can trigger other issues, and then you test that whole like tree basically, because they touch this one part, but 20 other things might cascade and cause issues. So you got to try and test them out as well to make sure they're still working. But I love testing. I don't know why. It was just like one of my favorite things back in the day. But either way, thank you guys and girls so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative. I know I talked a lot, but I guess the whole idea is, I wanted to educate people. I wanted to kind of drill in how this is done. And I hope I did educate somebody out there. Even one person, I'm happy. So if you were to educate, let me know. But I doubt anyone lasted this long to the end of the video. That would be painful. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like if you're into that stuff. And we'll see you wonderful people next time. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.